Welcome back. This is the first in my new series called Underrated, and the album is El Diablo by Willhaven. El Diablo was released in 1997, and I've got a very brief story about this one before I get into giving you a few details on it. I bought this album and Battle for Los Angeles by Rage Against the Machine from this tiny record store on the same day. Came back with both these CDs. At the time I was like 14 at this point, going back a long time. I listened to Rage Against the Machine first and I thought it was okay, but it was a bit dull for what I was looking for at the time. And the Willhaven CD absolutely terrified me. It terrified me to the point that I actually put it away in a drawer and left it there. Partly, I think the artwork and the visceral sound of this album scared me. It genuinely scared me. I've never had this experience with an album since or previous. So I left it in this drawer for ages. I forgot it was there, and then I came back to it a few years later and I was like, just rummaging through this drawer, probably looking for something else. I'm like, oh, there's this album that I completely forgot about. And then I put it on again, however long later, a year later or something. I was like, oh, wow. This is very, very good. So, this album is their first album, which I often forget about. I always think it's their third album for some reason. I don't know why. For a debut album, this thing is intense. Like I said, it scared me because it was so... It just starts out and it sounds like the beginning of a horror movie or something. The drums come in. And you're like, okay, what's gonna happen next? And this really down-tuned, chunky, distorted bass guitar comes in. And then it slams in with this guitar that sounds like it's screaming. And then Grady starts screaming on top. And it's like, Jesus! I was becoming accustomed to screaming metal at the time, right? But this was on another level. And for 1997, holy crap. I'm kind of having to accustom myself to not going track by track with this, because that's not what I'm doing here. But I will give you some examples of the album, of course. But I'm not going to detail, each pausing at 30 seconds each time throughout the album. All I can say is that if you like the sound of this, or this, or even this, then you'll like the album because it's incredibly consistent. Once you get into the first 2-3 songs, there's not going to be anything on here that takes you by surprise, really. It's straight down this one lane that Willhaven, at this point, like to be in. I have shown Willhaven to other people in more recent times, and some people have not been blown away by them for some reason. They haven't said it's bad or anything, and I'm talking about metalheads here. But they've said it's nothing special, nothing that they haven't heard before, and I think it's just special to me because I discovered this album so young, and it made such an impression on me so young, and I've kept up with all of their other music, by the way. I've listened to all of their albums many, many, many times. This one, El Diablo, none of their albums ever had the same impact to me. Because no other album has ever terrified me for real. It's called El Diablo, and I thought this was... My child mind was like, maybe this actually did come from the devil. And when you listen to it, it's like doom metal injected with testosterone and then set on fire and then chucked off a bridge. It's that metal. And you're not going to find any super fast double pedal on this at all, and that's kind of what I liked about it when I rediscovered it for the second time, because I was listening to a lot of Slipknot, for example, And a lot of bands with double pedal just would have discovered Meshuggah around this time as well. So there was a lot of that in a lot of the stuff I was listening to, but this doesn't have it at all. And Will Haven's music, I don't even think there's a single Will Haven song that has double pedal on it. It's very mid-tempo, to not say down-tempo, but it kind of opened my mind to the fact that metal could be heavy as hell, but not be very fast. It was kind of confusing for me to get my head around that, to be honest. I liked that it was confusing. It was a juxtaposition of it being heavy but really slow. It was similar to Korn in that sense, but I'd say even slower than Korn for the most part. Later albums, they do step it up a little bit. There's a lot where it gets much more intense, like fast-paced and stuff. But El Diablo is a really good debut album. It's incredible to kick off their career with this. It's a weird nostalgia that I get with this album because, like I said, my very first impression was terror and fear. Now I get that, but also like a real strong sense of nostalgia. I get very conflicting emotions about this album, but the consistency of it, the heaviness of it, the darkness of it, like it is unrelenting in its darkness. It does have moments where it mellows out a little bit. Not to say that it goes into any ballads or anything. Its darkness prevails throughout the whole thing, and again, throughout most of their discography as well. They're a very, very dark, morbid band. I mean, if you're watching this because you already know this album and this band, then of course you know. But this is my recommendation to you. If you're a subscriber, someone who follows my channel, then you're probably into heavy music, right? The title's in the name. And so I recommend this to anyone who is into very, very heavy metal. I'm not talking heavy metal as in, Iron Maiden. I mean metal that is heavy as fuck. I'd recommend this to someone who was into new metal or industrial or doom metal or black metal even. There's a bit of crossover with most metal genres apart from something like speed metal or thrash. It's because, like I said, it's very down-tempo but heavy music and dark and twisted. And I will say that Grady, the vocalist's scream voice, he's got to be in my top 10 screams ever. And this was 1997. Will Haven released their latest album a few years ago, and he still sounds exactly the same, like 30 years later. It's incredible. I'll put a comparison here for you. I don't know how he's managed it. There's a lot of vocalists, Corey Taylor, for example, everyone knows who Corey Taylor is. He's got a great scream voice, but his voice has changed over the years. For better or for worse. I mean, in the first album, he was untamed and unchained like a demon, and now, over his career, he's learned how to do it properly and healthily. Grady sounds like he's doing the exact same thing he was doing 30 years ago, which does not sound tamed at all. It sounds demonic still. And this is where it all started. Musically, like I've been saying, it's nothing technical. I could play probably all of this. Maybe not the guitar, because I'm not so strong on guitar, but drums definitely, bass definitely. But the screaming. And that's, I think, kind of to end on, that's kind of what terrified me about this album, was the screaming. I'd never heard such visceral screaming, and I was a big fan of Slipknot's first album, but this goes way beyond that. And it's all he does. Corey Taylor was doing singing even on that first Slipknot album, but Grady is just screams all the time, constantly. He doesn't do anything else. And it scared the pants off me when I was young. But these days, I love it, and I love the fact that he still sounds this way. One final thing to end on is the Deftones connection. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, basically Will Haven and Deftones go back decades actually at this point. They, I believe they're from the same place, Sacramento. I could be wrong, but they've known of each other. They toured together and stuff when they were much younger. I don't know if they're in contact these days, but whatever. But Will Haven, to me, always sounded like the little evil stepbrother of Deftones, because there is a similarity in the guitar tone, at least with early Deftones. Deftones is a lot more smoothed out. I think they influenced each other in some ways, back in the day, at least. And Stephen Carpenter is on the Willhaven song as well. So yeah, if you like Deftones, you might like Willhaven. So yeah, I'm going to cut it off there before I go on to an incredibly long spiel about their entire discography, because I could do that, but we're just talking about El Diablo here, so I'll keep it brief. If you've enjoyed this little underrated episode, then do let me know, because I have more planned. I have plenty more planned, actually. More deep dives will be coming, but I thought I'd pepper the channel with a few like this and see how they perform. If you're already subscribed, then thank you for being here. If this is the first video of mine that you've watched, then welcome, and do consider subscribing. I have still not thought of how to end videos yet, so I'm just going to say, go away.